more time and explain what I'm about. It's very good to finally be able to have a lecture to kind of share a little bit about what I mean and what exactly is AI. I know there's a lot of conversation right now around what AI is, and I'm sure you're not unaware of already. Right? So when I came here, I was requested that if you can speak a little bit about and explain to everyone what AI is and how it's being used right now. That will be really beneficial for people who are going into their journey and becoming officers at some point in time, and then you will be the one driving the force to the next level. So it's always a good idea to stay in touch with what's happening around. And this is something that I do for a living. I'll go ahead and give an introduction about myself. Yeah. So my name is Gaurav. I currently work at Spotify. I hope some of you might know about it.
Yes.
So I work at Spotify as an engineering manager, and I lead a team of software engineers. What we do is we build the main framework called a chassis on which the entire app is built. Everything that you see there is built of different services. They're called microservices. And my team supports the building of everything underneath. So you might have seen some features called AI DJ, or if I had rolled out something back, that's something that my team worked on. In addition, I also work as a consultant. It's very small there, but it's a company that I own, and it's called Metalytics, and it's an AI and data analytics consulting. So what I do is I work with quite a few organizations to help them out in setting up their data strategy, their analytics strategy. How can they make use of information that they receive on a day-to-day basis? And this varies from e-commerce, where you can buy stuff online, to listening music, to agriculture, to tourism, all different kinds of areas. In the past, I worked at Facebook as an analytics manager. So what I was doing there was leading a team which was responsible for proactive removal of content that you won't see on the platform. So I'll give you a very good example. If you go to Facebook Marketplace, you would see someone selling a fake Gucci bag, right? For every one image that you see, Facebook proactively, through machine learning, takes out about 100,000. All this is done within a few seconds. So how do you do things at a scale where you can leverage technology to do that, to make the platform a safer place, is something that my team was doing. In the past, I worked in data engineering and data analytics capacity at companies like Home24, Lazada. All these are based in different places. So at Spotify, I'm based in London. Before that, I was working at Facebook in Ireland. Then at Home24, I was working in Germany. Before that, I was living in Singapore and Malaysia. So over the last 10 years, I've been quite fortunate to travel a few places, live there, and basically get an understanding of what's happening around the world when it comes to technology. I studied masters at Singapore Management University, which is a course in information systems. Now it's called data science. I think some of you might know about data science, but at that time when I studied, it was called information systems. And my bachelor's, as pointed out, is in electrical engineering. I studied from Indore, college here, and spent very little time studying electrical, focused towards. And I want to make this section very talk not very serious, but more of an inquisitive. So at the end of the session, if you have more questions than what you started with, you're more motivated to ask more questions. That's the aim of the session. So if you understand some things and you're not sure about what's happening, why does it happen, and you are more curious to go home and study for that or see what's exactly happening, I would say I've done my job. Right. That's the idea behind this. I'm by no means claiming to say that I know everything about AI, because pretty much no one knows anything about AI. But we will go ahead and we'll go from there and see. So now I will put it on you, for anyone who knows, how do you understand AI? What is your definition? What do you think about AI? What do you think of when the word AI comes to your mind? Anyone wants to go first?
It is a technology that firstly AI stands for artificial intelligence, and basically it is a technology that mimics human intelligence.
Very good. Very good. First,
So learn from whatever previous decisions that. So not everything you need a external support to take decision rather than the machine or software itself is able to understand and take improvise themselves and to take.
That's good. Anyone else? Okay, who has very little understanding of that? You don't know, or you're very curious to know what exactly happened. All right, we'll go from that. So, what are we going to cover today? We're going to cover three things. I hope you can see. What is AI and the types of AI? Because you mentioned about neural network, machine learning, someone mentioned about algorithms and self-learning, improvising, all these things. Something we're going to share. What are the types of AI? How does it work? We'll look at some of the use cases, like how AI right now is transforming the world to the things that I'm seeing right now. And I've made an attempt to understand how AI is currently being used in defense and intelligence. So that way, you can see how it's being used in the world right now, and how can you use when you pass out? How can you use that? How can you see? That's the idea. So first of all, it's a very standard definition, and I think a lot of you have already covered some of the things. AI refers to systems or machines, and the focus is systems or machines that mimic human intelligence. They're not trying to be human, they're trying to mimic human intelligence. Perform tasks that can iteratively improve them, but it can only make those decisions based on the information they collect. That's a very important thing to know. AI right now, the way the definition has been, is it can do anything? Not really. It cannot do anything. It only does things based on what it knows, what's the information. If you ask a machine that is used only for, I don't know, drilling, to write an article, it won't be able to do that because they are very different use cases. So it's very important that what separates AI from regular machine is they can take input back or feedback and improvise on top of it. So I added a very basic keyword thing which said, is ChatGPT AI? And I think everyone would agree that yeah, that's the case. ChatGPT is an AI. But it's just not the only thing that is AI, right? So if you talk to people, everyone has this thing like, yeah, AI is basically, we have used ChatGPT to create some text, to create some images, and it's pretty amazing, right? But there's a lot more happening here. So there are two different types of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, essentially, as someone mentioned, is consisting of machine learning models. And we will go into the detail of what those models mean and how do they kind of go without going too much into the details as well. But generally speaking, there are two kinds of AI. One is called the narrow AI, and this is what most of your classes are, which is basically Siri on your phone. Alexa, what do they do? Is if you give them a prompt that Alexa play a song, feedback that Alexa knows what to do about it, and therefore it will play a song. The same goes for ChatGPT, which is a bit more advanced narrow AI, where it has gathered a lot of context, and therefore if you ask any kind of question to it, it will generate it. And the keyword here is generate, because there are AI which don't generate anything. So that's a key distinction, because a lot of people understand AI as just generating a text, generating a nice image, or the fake images that you might have seen about, right? So there is a lot more than that, and there are some key players in this area right now, ChatGPT being one of them, but that's not the only player, right? Quite a few companies that are doing things. Google is investing in something called Bard, which is now being renamed as Gemini, which I don't know if someone. And then there is a company called Midjourney, which basically, if you give it a prompt that create an image of me, of Gaurav giving presentation to all the city officers, it will create something based on the memory, once again, based on the information that has been collected. That's important to know. And then there is something called general AI. General AI is basically someone who is able to understand, learn, and apply intelligence broadly across any task. And this is something I think you were mentioning a little bit about, that it can do any kind of decisions, which is what a lot of times when you talk to someone about AI, they think about super machine or superhuman that can do everything, control the world kind of thing, right? So that's what the definition is, generally speaking, what general AI. So if you look a bit more here in the detail, you will see a lot of that you see here. That all these three players are a very small speck, what we call as generative kind of AI. Generally speaking, there is machine learning, which is something someone mentioned, neural network and machine learning. And then there's a bigger picture, bigger circle that we don't really know. How do we do things by its own? Think of robotic systems, sensors, neuroscience inspired AI. There's been no development in this. So as we know right now, AI lies within the realms of generative AI and machine learning. That's basically all that people have been able to break into. And you might also ask the question, why AI now? Machine learning has been there for tens of years. I started my first job 10 years ago, and that's what we were discussing. Why is there such a big hype around AI now in the last 1 or 2 years? Anyone has an idea? One thinks why it could be? Only now there is a big hype.
Because of the penetration of the internet has become much more available. That is one of the reasons.
The internet was available to countries abroad. It has started affecting the common life at the aspect. Insecurity.
Digitalization has increased after pandemic.
Okay.
Computational power has increased.
That's correct. Yes. The computational power has increased massively over the last 3 years. It used to cost, as an example, if you are 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we used to have personal computers with a RAM of what? I used to have, my first computer had a RAM of like what, 500 MB, right? Now my RAM on this one is 64 gigs, just the RAM alone. That's how much computation is needed to run applications. And that's how much advancement that we have made in computation. Anyone follows stock market, you would know Nvidia stock has gone up like crazy over the last few days, right? Why has it happened? Because they are riding the wave of computation. AI, in order to run an AI model, you need a lot of computation. It needs to take hundreds, billions of parameters, variables, to be able to compute and come up with a result within a fraction of seconds. What you see within ChatGPT, as an example, built up of 100 billion parameters. And these are basically inputs that it uses to compute and produce a result. This cannot happen. If you had to do this 20 years back, it would take you hours to come up with a result that ChatGPT comes up now within a second. So the key reason why the world is now increasing in terms of AI hype, because of computational power has become very strong and very cheap. Okay, so one more time. So is ChatGPT AI? Yes, it is. But now it's not just AI, it's generative AI. What it does, it learns, these programs leverage machine learning techniques and create data output that looks a lot like what they have been shown before. When you ask ChatGPT or Midjourney to create an image or write an essay on something, it's not creating out of wild. It has taken a lot of parameters, understanding it, and then compiles it into a Gaussian output of something that it thinks is relevant to the question that you have. There is something called true positive and true negatives, based on which the creators of OpenAI, creators of ChatGPT, and there's so many other learning models that basically understand whether this is a good response or a bad response. Even if you use ChatGPT, you will see that there's a prompt that comes up, was this response helpful for you or not? That's the kind of machine learning, that's the feedback that you are giving to OpenAI to basically do that. So I'm focusing simply on ChatGPT at this point in time, but it is a kind of a generative AI. There's a difference that generative AI generates. There's a lot of other machine learning models that do not generate it, but they are still AI. We'll dive a bit into that, but before we get into it, so how does AI works? I spoke a little bit about it already, but imagine, let's take a breakdown of a case, an animal book. We all learn through this when we were learning, right? So when we were growing up, we were told A for apple, B for ball, C for cat. So in future, when you see an apple, you would say, what is that? That's an apple, right? But that's a ball. This, in a very nutshell, is how AI works. So every time that I said, oh, is that a ball? And that is B for, I said cat, my mother would say that, no, B for ball, right? That's a correction that happens. That's literally, but expanded to a massive scale, is how AI works. You have models that have been trained on data sets. This is called training and testing. That have been trained on data sets for the past, which we say are the correct data sets. For example, someone is running and they run 10 kilometers in 40 minutes is a valid time, or someone runs 10 kilometers in 60 minutes is a valid time. But if you come up and say someone runs 10 kilometers in 10 minutes, it's not a valid time. That's the bad data, right? So we The creators of LLM or large language models or AI or machine learning models essentially train their models to identify what is the right data set, what is the wrong data set. Every time it's the right data set, it gets rewarded with something, given the variable or the pointer. Every time it's wrong, it tracks or removes the previous variable that it had. This training and testing over a period of 100,000 times is what makes an AI production ready, as we call it, where you can go ahead and ask any question and it will deliver that. Imagine bringing back to the same animal book. We all must have gone through this, I don't know, like hundreds of times to be able to come to the thing that apple starts with an A, ball starts with B. Exactly how machine learning model works. So it's replicating the thought process and the way we learn exactly the same way. And why is it possible now, as someone said, computational power? It's very easy to train on these. Any questions? Anyone understands something differently or a question about it? Cool. So we talked about Gen AI types. So this is generative AI. We generate things, right? So what are the kind of things that is being generated right now by AI? This type of generative AI. There's text. You might have all seen if you go to machine learning models. There's images. I need a song with a 4x4 beats with this kind of melody, and AI can basically now create those sounds. Because essentially all the MP3 files that we have are basically data, right? Ones and zeros. So the AI model can read through them, understand what is right, what is wrong, and generate something which looks similar to what it has been. And many more. There's quite a lot of things coming out. If anyone follows the OpenAI announcement, they have released a new model called Sora, which essentially, if you write something, it will create a video out of it. So a lot of videos that are out there on platform that you might have seen on social media, WhatsApp or whatnot, is basically coming out of that model. But that's not all, right? As I mentioned. There are also non-generative AI types as well, which we use on a day-to-day basis, but you might not think they are actually AI. We all have phones which have a fingerprint recognition or a face recognition. That is also a type of AI. It's not producing any result, it's producing just whether it's a match or not a match, right? You log into your phone, if you provide a PIN code, it's a simple computation, whether it's right or wrong. But if you have a face ID, it checks whether the face ID matches with what we have, and then basically says whether this is a valid face ID or a non-valid, right? And this learns, the same model is applicable for each of our phones. It's not like they're making a new model for every one of them. That's where facial recognition is. Financial fraud detection. A lot of you might know about it already, that we have models built in financial industry which essentially automatically flag if a transaction was a fraud or not. If you are here and all of a sudden someone charges a credit card somewhere in Dubai or somewhere in the US, these will be flagged as fraud transactions. How does that happen? Because they happen in real time. And this is an AI is a machine learning model behind there. That's basically making that. Email spam filtering. We all use emails. We have spams. And there is an automatic folder that gets created called spam filter. How does that happen? Also machine learning model. Finally, recommendation system. When we do online shopping, we see a lot of recommendations, right? Because you like the blue jeans, here are 5 different blue jeans that you would like, right? How does that happen? That's also recommendation systems that are built on models on AI. I actually worked in one of them in my previous company where I built a machine learning model that basically helps people understand if you like a brown furniture, with the chair which is brown, automatically detect what are the kind of products that we have in our catalog that are also brown and of the same color, therefore recommend them in real time. Another thing that you might have seen, and we discussed a little bit about, that within ChatGPT or models, right? Why is that a big deal? Why people go crazy about it? Now there's another notification or announcement about GPT-5, which is a newer AI model, which is faster, and there's a small comparison here. So the 3.5 AI, which is right now available for everyone to use, considers 175 billion parameters. Think of it as information. If you are asking it a question, if you're asking ChatGPT a question, it has a database of 175 billion units. Because of that units is how it's able to create an answer for you, or it's able to create an image for you because it has read 175 billion parameters. But it only gives you text input, so you can only write to it. And at any point in time, you can write 8,000 words to it. That's all that you can get out of it. And then there is a new update that's coming in, and this is purely an example that's happening everywhere, is GPT-4, which is looking into 1 trillion parameters. That's 100 times more than 175. Imagine you have a computation power now that at real time you can scan 101 trillion variables. For example, when you, and what I mean by variable is, if you're playing cricket, for example, the ball is coming to you and you're batting. There are so many variables. What's the spin? What's the movement of the ball? Where it will drop? What's the pitch like? What's the humidity conditions? All these kind of things are variable. Imagine you have to make that decision within a split second on where the ball will come, right? That's exactly what this thing is doing. Here I mentioned 5 variables or parameters. GPT-4 on an average has 1 trillion parameters. That gives you an idea of how much computation is doing in a single day, and that's why the response. That's why AI is changing the way people are doing things. Because the same thing that used to take us years to develop is now taking minutes. There are people actually running out of jobs because of it. And you might have heard that AI is taking away jobs, right? The reason why it's happening is because, for example, any kind of creation, there were people who were creating images, content. It's all being replaced. That takes months to come up with those kind of things. And now you have an AI that's taking 3 seconds to. So that's the scale at which the world is changing around. And as I said, GPT-4 has not only text but image input. So now you can drop an image and say, this is an image of us all sitting together. Create a hyper-realistic image of us all sitting together in a similar way somewhere in Paris. And AI can create that within a few seconds because it knows what exactly that is. And it has a higher words capacity, it can write anything pretty much. So that's a bit about AI and what exactly it can do, what exactly it's about, and what exactly is there. We can talk a little bit about use cases. So some of the use cases that are being used right now in AI. So, and then we'll move on to the defense use cases stuff. And I would need your help in kind of linking that together. Healthcare. Right now, healthcare is one of the most important things where AI is being used. And we talked about computation. Every time a person comes in, there's so many variables, so many information. Everyone is different from each other. You can't have one size that fits all. So how can AI help healthcare? They are leveraging that data to understand what medicines, what diagnosis will work on someone better than other groups. It can do those diagnoses at a rapid, fast rate, those models, and therefore come up with a result much faster than an individual will come up. Similarly, agriculture. This is an area which is changing India massively right now. Imagine you are a farmer, you have 100 acres of land. How do you know where is the soil, what is the soil type, what will grow where, what is the kind of climatic conditions that's going to happen in the next 2 days, and what is the need of a plant that you have for it. Right? So if you have a crop that is undergoing infestations or needs to be watered more, how can AI or AI models are basically scanning through the entire field and coming up with ways or recommendations to farmers to tell them what exactly they need to do going forward. I worked in a company which does this and basically did that. So we talked about finance, there are a lot of things trading happening. So if you go to the stock market and make a sale and you buy a stock for a company, it takes you like 10 seconds to buy that. Within for that one sale, an AI model can do about 100,000 of them within that time. There are companies out there which are just doing that. Their role is they have models that this algorithm trading. They have parameters set that this is the buy and sell options, and it's doing millions of sales in a particular day or day. That's where AI is changing the way it works. Another thing that doesn't get talked a lot about in the world right now is mental health support and well-being. So you have chat assistants that can talk to you depending on your mood and change the way the counseling session goes. And this is a topic that has revolutionized the way humans are basically saying yes to more counseling than ever. Because everyone goes through mental health, everyone goes through stages where they are not at their peak capacity, and it's a widely accepted fact. So how do you use AI and not have to worry about going to a specific person or have to spend a lot of time and have something available at your fingertips? Is how AI is being used right now. Education is another area, and same in environmental protection. There are massive developments where, depending on your current ability, your course, your education system will be changed. Right? If I'm explaining it to you in a way that you don't understand, AI can understand that and offer you a different approach. So you're not restricted to just one teacher. That's also another improvement that is happening. And the same goes for environmental protection. We have seen a lot of climate analysis data going on. So that's basically an area around what's happening. Now let's talk about AI in defense. But before that, anyone knows anything about what's happening around AI in defense? What is your take on it? Have you seen any kind of use cases where AI is being used? Not just in India, but across the world.
Boston Dynamics is making robots.
Sorry?
Boston Dynamics is making
Yes.
robots
Yes.
for the warfare.
That's good.
Sensor system that is a R&D
That's true.
surveillance.
We are having lot of drones that can identify which is enemy and which is our own.
CIBMS also
This is
integrate the
good.
artificial intelligence. CIBMS also integrate the artificial intelligence into the guarding of the borders.
That's correct. Yeah, that makes my life very easy because that's all the use cases that is happening right now. Right? So, if you look into the military usage of AI around the world, autonomous systems, unmanned aerial and ground vehicles has made massive improvements over the last 3 years because of AI. So now there are surveillance of aerial vehicles which can identify the audience, identify what's happening across different areas without involving any human. It can easily understand in real time what exactly is the situation happening on the ground, as opposed to someone going in and going into it. The same goes for ground vehicle. It can understand the terrain types. It can understand what is, if there have been explosive material, if there have been any kind of thing, and do all those kind of stuff in real time rather than a person waiting behind you telling what. Similarly, cyber defense, that's an area I didn't hear about. So everything is digital right now. Everything is happening. There are more cyber attacks happening now than it has ever happened before. A lot of economies are struggling because of cyber attacks than actual attacks. So AI is able to understand in real time how can it detect threats, signals across the world that are causing malware or adding malware into your companies or your organization's servers. It is also able to take response by eliminating those attacks in near real time. Imagine if you have 5 analysts doing that job, as opposed to an AI that's doing 100,000 analysts for a job in real time. That's the scale at which it's being used already. And it's not some of the things that can be used, it's already being used now. Secondly, prediction. It can make prediction around what's going to happen based on the signals that we are talking about. Internet is one giant roadway. You can say that every signal is communicating with each other. AI can listen to it, understand if this is a good signal versus a bad signal, and basically predict what's going to happen because it has been made aware of it. Okay. Another thing is surveillance and recon. I think we talked about it already. Someone mentioned around surveillance, right? So we are doing a massive satellite image analysis right now. Imagine if you have a real-time feed of someone observing a piece of land, and there is one person behind constantly observing what's happening on development. This is a work that someone will need a few hours to go through a footage to understand what's the parameters, what's the changes happening, is there an enemy bunker now, was there some movement before. This can all be done now in real time because of AI. Because the model understands if a truck is moving, the model understands that there is movement of a truck, and therefore it needs to be reported. It can summarize those changes and basically give you a report by the end of hour actually, that someone has to do an analysis of multiple things. And that's happening already right now. Similarly, signal intelligence. This is also another thing that is happening is there are a lot of messages that are being shared across the board via the internet. They're all encrypted, but so you wouldn't know whether it's a good message versus a bad message. And every time, imagine you have to make those decisions, you have to decrypt it, do all those kind of communication changes. And this takes a lot of time, and in the meantime, those signals will be lost forever. AI can do all of that signal intelligence in real time, apply multiple approaches. One algorithm doesn't work to decrypt a message, it can apply a different algorithm in real time. Those are the kind of things that being used today. And finally, information warfare. This is an area that's very, very important if you're following Indian election, US elections, or any kind of things. People are using psychological ops analysis to understand what is the user sentiments around things, right? How people feel about a particular action, a particular country, a particular force, a particular action that has been taken by a force. Everything has a sentiment. And AI can basically go near real time and understand and analyze those sentiments. You as a user do not have to go through and pass through all this information and understand that. Similarly, automated propaganda. If you are trying to create a propaganda, trying to understand what is happening and create a news, just like US did in fake news, a lot of things around us, their White House attacks and all this kind of stuff, AI is responsible for doing that as well. So this makes you think there are good ways or good causes for AI, but at the same time bad causes as well. There are cons of AI as well. That's something to think about, how AI can be leveraged to also do bad things. Right? It's just not all good things. Computation or speed is not always the best thing. So I'm going to take a pause here to see if, when we talk about the bad things, what comes to your mind about all the things that I've explained? Yeah, that's one of the things. What else? Terminator.
Lack of privacy.
People losing jobs.
Environmental damage. AI can do environmental damages.
Voice cloning. Voice cloning. Already AI has been used.
Yeah, I think we used to do that. And now, if you think about it in the context of, if you can think of an example now,
Also dividing the society.
yes, that's what I was thinking.
Ethically.
Ethical usage. There's a lot of unethical usage of AI as well. It's being used. There was a recent news about an employee from SoftBank, which is one of the biggest venture capitalist funds right now in the world, transferring $25 million to the company in a video call with the CEO, CFO, and the CTO, and all three of them were fake. They were not real people, and they were having a conversation with this analyst in real time and convinced the analyst to transfer $25 million. That's the kind of scale that is being used. So it makes you think, like, what are the different ways in which people can use AI? Right? There's a lot of, just like AI can do things massively fast, it can also destroy things massively fast. We as individuals who are going into the world where AI is going to become a norm, we need to be prepared for that. We need to understand the good and the bad side of things. I think everyone mentioned deepfake. That's a massive challenge to understand how we can solve it. And not many people know how to solve this already. There is a lot of discussions now happening around ethical usage of AI. Because AI can basically divide people based on the knowledge it has. In the US, we have seen massive Gemini, for example, that has been stopped now purely because it was considered racist towards a particular section of the society in its responses. Those things seem very simple on paper, but have massive consequences, societal consequences. So that's also another thing to consider when it comes to usage. Anything else that comes to your mind when it comes to military, to BSF, forces? What do you think you can use AI for? What do you think you should not use it?
Basically, it can be used in the area of insurgency, where we can identify the particular individuals who are basically involved in the militancy and other things.
But to keep a check on radicalization, in the society.
Whenever we get a contact number of any, not in this BSF, but we can use in an intelligence collection. Like if we have a phone number, we can locate the person real time. Location of the person can also be located, and plus its other members, other persons linked to it can also be found out from his contact. In AI, we can identify the pattern and their analyzing their movement,
Yes.
and using the AI, we can plan our strategy.
We can monitor the border population and identify their patterns so that we can recognize the culprits or the smugglers from them.
How more efficiently we can use our resources.
That's true. Logistics planning is very important. How do you use your logistics and resources efficiently?
Human resource management obviously.
So it seems there's a lot of ideas already, and maybe it's something worth thinking about. Like if you had to think about resource planning or surveillance or intelligence, how would you go about it when you actually get into the field? That's something to think about. There are, as technology is progressing, these things are becoming more and more easier, even for someone who doesn't know how to code, even for someone who doesn't want to code. You can do all of those things very easily using technology, using applications, right? So keep an open mind around how you can leverage AI on a daily basis, because the world is changing very fast. Everything is very digital, as I mentioned. We all know that it's very digital. But how do you add another aspect, AI, into that usage of digital technology is what's going to make the difference between how a force, how BSF, or how any military organization is safeguarding its interest from your opposition. That's one of the key things that I want to highlight, and I would like to take some time if we have for Q&A. Anyone?